Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Cheryl Carlisle, and I'm the Chair of the Finance and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Can I welcome everyone to the meeting, which is a multi-location meeting. We also have members of the Education, Skills Overview and Scrutiny Committee. They're joining us today for the school loan request report. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded and will be available for viewing after the meeting. Should the live streaming fail, the meeting will continue and a recording will be available through the Council's website following the conclusion of the meeting. Can I remind members that translation facilities are available, and for those attending remotely to choose your language of choice, please. For those wishing to speak in the chamber, please raise your hand. For those attending remotely, please use the raised hand functions. We will alternate between speakers in the chamber and remote attendees. For those attending remotely, please note that those in the chamber will be unable to use the chat facility. Committee members who are attending remotely are required to leave their camera on throughout the debate and when voting in order to maintain the integrity of the decision-making process. If you do need to leave the meeting temporarily, pop a message in the chat function so the Democratic Services Officer is aware, and then let us know when you return. I expect everyone present and participating in this meeting to conduct themselves appropriately and be respectful to each other. That applies to members, officers, and anyone in the public gallery. When I open up the debate to members, I will ask committee members to speak and put their questions first, followed by non-committee members. Whilst I do not wish to stifle debate, can I remind members that any questions should be focused on the subject matter and to avoid repetition. If I feel the length of individual speeches are negatively impacting on the overall time for discussion and becoming unmanageable, I will defer to the committee's rules of procedure, which limits the length of speeches to 5 minutes. Can I remind members that there's an exempt item on the agenda today and that you should be the only person able to hear any confidential and exempt items being discussed. Whew, I think I'm going to pre-record that feature. Okay, well, moving on to the agenda, I'd like to welcome our colleagues from Ysgol Cynfryn here with us today and our education scrutiny colleagues. Could we have apologies for absence, please, Sally?
Yeah, apologies have been received from Councillors Chris Hughes, Councillor Sian Grady and Councillor Jacob Williams, and also Fran Lewis, Head of People and Performance.
Thank you, Sally. Any other apologies? No? Oh.
I have to leave at 11 o'clock. I have a funeral. I have a report under exempt, and the lead is going to introduce that on my behalf. So I'll be leaving at 11 o'clock.
Absolutely, Councillor Mike. Thank you for letting me know. We move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Matt, is there anything you wish to say on this? Councillor Jeff.
Good morning, Chair. On item 6, the Lisbon Conference School. I'm an LEA governor on that from November last year.
Thank you, Councillor Jeff.
Yeah, Chair, as appointed by the authority, that means that it's a personal interest only. So the requirement to declare has already been met, and otherwise Councillor Jeff can remain in the room during the debate.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, there's a few references to housing and things there. So as chair of Cartrefi Conwy, I'd better declare an interest.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Anything? No, just wait for the items. Yeah. And Councillor Anne online.
Thanks, Chair. Personal interest in item 10, which is disposal of land in Dogwalchi.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? No. Okay, we now move on to item 3, urgent matters. Not aware of any urgent matters this morning. And ditto item 4, no questions to cabinet members. We now move on to item 5 to review the forward work programme. Dawn is going to present this. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Chair. So for the purpose of the live stream and recording, I'm Dawn Hughes, the Scrutiny and Committee Services Officer for Conwy. So can I advise members of the following? So the forward plan has now been updated following consultation with heads of service and members. There were a couple of queries at the last meeting which I wasn't at, so can I advise you of the following? So in relation to the brickwork site, there will be a report coming to FROSC on the 3rd of July. Also, I believe Councillor Paul made reference to Abergele football pitch. This matter actually relates to the Economy in Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and it's been agreed that as it forms part of a larger project, which is the Leisure Services Repair and Maintenance Facilities Upgrade project, it was taken off as an individual item. So that project will report to Economy in Place. I'm just waiting confirmation for a date, so I'll let you know when that comes through. Reference was also made to getting dates for some of the items under future items. I am working with officers to try and secure dates for as many topics as possible, but sometimes, you know, it's not possible to secure a date. So that's my update, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Dawn. There may be another item. I understand we are receiving the peer review report. I think it's this week, is it, Councillor Charlie? Oh, right, okay, and that will be coming. That will be coming here for debate, and it will be a special for us if need be. So, thank you for that. No comments on the forward work programme? No, okay. Could I have a? Oh,
Chair?
Councillor Andrew.
Good morning, Chair. For the
Morning.
purposes of live streaming, my name is Councillor Andrew Wood. I've just got a very. You'll have to help me on this one, or one of the officers. The report on page, has got a page number, it's in the forward work programme. It is for the recycling vehicles contract. There was a report going to the Governance and Audit Committee on electric vehicles and the cost involved. Is this the same one? Because I've obviously missed one of the audit meetings. I've not done all of them lately. So can somebody just clarify, is there two reports or one? And this is just for your knowledge, Claire, Chair. This is about the cost of electric recycling vehicles and having the infrastructure and the actual place to be able to recharge them and do something with it in respect to money that's going to be given by Welsh Government in respect to the efficiency of the diesel vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. Reen or Man, did you want to? Does anyone want to answer? Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew. Sorry, apologies. I'm not sure what page you're referring to in the papers.
Okay, it says vehicle. Sorry, page. It's over type. So it's 23, page 24.
Page
And it says
24.
recycling vehicles contract. We got it, Amanda?
Yeah, I've got the reference to the paper there. I'll have to admit I'm not cited on the paper that's due to come to Cabinet, but as you say, the Governance and Audit Committee have an item on its forward work programme to consider this. So perhaps if you could leave it with me, I'll clarify what that paper is and come back to you.
Can you also clarify, has it been to another committee beforehand, this?
No, I'm not aware that this particular paper would, but obviously the Audit Committee is there to look at the control arrangements of the authority. This potentially, if it's coming to Cabinet, looks like it's a decision about a specific contract, which is a different function.
Okay, well, I can leave that with you, and if you just give us an update the next meeting, or to myself about the actual audit and governance one, which was talking about millions of pounds. So that's why I had a particular interest in it and protecting people's money. Okay, thank you, Amanda.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Andrew. I think Councillor Jeff might have some insight into this.
Yeah, you should do.
As a Cabinet
I'm
member.
sorry, Chair, I was going to say, in fact, that I'm very happy to speak to the councillor outside the meeting. I'll clarify the point first of all.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's not fair
Thank-
to just dump it on Geraint as he's just walked in. So.
No, that's
Geraint.
okay, Chair. Chair, can I just ask the members in the Adnoddau to speak clearly into the mics? It's quite hard to hear sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, we'll.
I'm nearly 60 now. I'm nearly deaf now. You see, not Jeff. We've been riding motorbikes
No
too long.
comments. No comments.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, now all the questions have finished. Have we got a proposer and seconder to agree the forward work programme, please? Lovely, thank you. Could everyone show in favour of it? Excellent, thank you very much. We now move on to item 6. This is the loan request from Ysgol Cynfran, pages 51 to 62. Councillor Julie is going to introduce that and have a presentation. I think it's Claire Scanlon, Education Improvement Service Manager, is going to talk us through it after that. Thank you, Councillor Julie.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. So yes, before us this morning is a loan request from Ysgol Cynfran. I just want to highlight that obviously our discussions this morning need to be purely around this and not bring in the wider discussion around loans. That opportunity will come going forward through scrutiny to look at how the process is and perhaps changes that we can make to it. But this is purely around what's in front of us this morning. Just so that you're aware in terms of what's already happened, which you will have seen in the report, there has been ongoing consultation and work between the head teacher, the business manager with Claire and the team, and with David and the finance team has been ongoing. And then when it became apparent that a loan was the way forward in order to close off the accounts this year, we then started the process where myself and Mike, who sat behind me, also met with the head teacher and met with the business manager and David and Amanda to look at where we're at and ask some of those questions around how we got to where we are today. Yeah, and as you will see from the report, that a number of different things. That's predominantly falling pupil roll, which is a very recent thing that's only occurred since 2022, that's impacted on budgets, and cuts to the ISB. And in fact, the initial shortfall of the school was 141,000, and that's been reduced down to the 67 that you saw from school balances, school fund, cessation of temporary and fixed term contracts. So the school's been working really hard to address this. That will reduce further due to grant funding, which David will go into or Claire will go into to give you the detail around that. So I think the final figure that is likely to be is around the 44,000 mark this morning. The school, like I said, has been on a journey in terms of addressing this, and I know they've worked incredibly hard. And having spoken to the head teacher, you know, I support the decisions that they've taken in this process. As you're aware, we've had some schools make redundancies. They've been voluntary redundancies. That was the path that this school has taken, but we had no members of staff put themselves forward for voluntary redundancies, which is why we find ourselves here today. So that process has moved now to compulsory redundancies, but that's a more protracted process. And in fact, once that's completed, as you'll hear now, that will put the school in a position to repay the loan really quite quickly. And there are plans in place to address any perhaps shortfall that may come up over the coming years, but I'll hand over to the team for that. I just wanted to say really that this is not an easy process to go through as a head teacher. It's a decision that you don't come to lightly, and they've worked incredibly close with the team over the recent months. Yeah, I think the fact that we can see how much that's come down from the 140,000 in itself is a positive story, which David will go into. And I support this process. As I said, it's not an easy thing. It's a challenging time, we're all aware, in terms of budgets. So I'm happy to support. Obviously, it's for you to make a recommendation today. But I feel that the processes that we've been through, the questions that we've asked, and the work that the school has done mean that this is the opportunity to, what I would say is probably more of a bridging loan to address that shortfall in the short term whilst we go through the process of compulsory redundancies. And then the school has the plan in place for addressing where we're at in the coming years. But I'll hand over to Claire, and then David will give you a little bit more detail on the finances. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Julie. Claire, if you'd like to introduce yourself and then
Diolch.
present.
Good morning. I'm Claire Scanlon. I'm the Education Improvement Service Manager, and I've been working with the school, as have my team, around this process over the past few months in particular. Thank you for the time that you've taken to read the report presented, requesting financial support for Ysgol Cynfran in the form of a loan of £67,344. This will afford the school the opportunity to address their current financial situation. Appendix 1 sets out the details of the loan application and how the school plans to address the deficit and to repay the loan. As you will see, and as Councillor Julie has mentioned, the school have been able to reduce the initial shortfall of just short of 141,000 to the current shortfall of £67,344. This has been achieved through the use of reserves, use of the school fund, and cessation of temporary or fixed term positions within the school. The school have also been through a voluntary redundancy process from which there were no savings able to be generated. Consequently, the school have moved to a process of compulsory redundancies. Should the school have been able to achieve savings through voluntary redundancy, the school would have been able to set a balanced budget for 2023-24. However, the timelines of these processes mean the school require financial support to bridge the gap in order to produce a balanced budget by the local authority's 30th of June deadline. The loan will also allow the school the opportunity to work towards a longer-term sustainable position over a period of time. The school intends to repay the loan over a period of no more than 5 years. The proposed reduction in staffing and subsequent savings will be permanent, and therefore they will form the basis of the recovery plan for the school. It is also pertinent to share that the school is awaiting confirmation of, as at the time, unconfirmed grants, but I think David will have some updated information on that. And should that grant funding be devolved to the school, the actual drawdown figure is likely to reduce. There are details around the redundancy process, and I know that there have been some questions about the actual staffing figures. As yet, that's not determined because staff cost different amounts depending on their role within the school, depending on the length of time that they've been in service. So at present, the information that has been shared with staff and the information that we are sharing today is that the intention is to reduce that deficit. So to intend to get rid of that £67,000 current shortfall through the redundancy process. I can't give you a hard line that will mean this amount of staff because staff costs are different, and that is a process that is currently being gone through with the school staff, and therefore, you know, a difficult enough time for those staff members and the school as a whole. So I think it would be inappropriate to just throw an arbitrary figure out really of how many posts the school is looking to make redundant, but I think we can reasonably say that the redundancy process will assure the reduction of that figure so that we will be able to reduce the budget by the £67,344 or therein in order to address that deficit within the school's budget at present. David, do you want to pick up about any of the loans, please?
Good morning, David Jones, Principal Accountant for Education. So the only thing to add is that we've had confirmation of the RRS grant from Welsh Government of 13,700. So that reduces the 67,000, and there's a further 10,000 of grants which we're still awaiting. So that's what's bringing it down to the 44. And just to reassure the committee that the school is proactively working on the plan, and this hasn't come as a shock. That it has been planned. And a few years ago, the school went through compulsory redundancies for teaching assistants. And so this is part of the journey now that the school is on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, David. Yes, I'm sure it's been a very difficult time for the school, and I know members will respect that when they ask their questions. Okay, let's open it up to questions. Who's going to be first? Certainly, Councillor Mike.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was part of the process when we got together a couple of weeks ago to look at the robustness of the, if you like, the recovery plan, and I was satisfied that things were in place for the repayment. I think it's worth pointing out paragraph 4 in this report, 1.4, I should say, in this report, that we don't allow schools to set unbalanced budgets. So this is why we're here today, and I think it's worth pointing out as well that we're here today, and we've been here before. So this is not the first time a school has come to this forum requesting a loan. I'm aware of at least 2 others before Yscol Cynfran.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Mike. Okay, we'll now move to questions. I've got 4 members waiting to ask in the chamber. We'll start with Councillor Frank. Thank you, Councillor Frank.
Thank you, Chair. And my heart goes out to the school and every school that struggles financially. But my main interest is in page 59, number 2, with the less classes and the less intervention groups, less support for emotional children, reductions in mental health support for children. Now, I don't know how many children have got ALN and attend that school, but I do know it's an awful lot of resources. I don't know, it's another question. Is there anybody got special needs that attend that school? Because it's a parent's right to send their child to whatever school of their choice, which I slightly disagree with when we have special schools for special needs. But that is my question. All children are equal, and under the law, they must be treated equal. So you can't withdraw support for a child with a mental condition or another condition, while a children who is able-bodied gets full support. So I would like to think they rethink this, because surely a teacher would not withhold emotional support for a child who was in tears. So I think that part of number 2 should be withdrawn. I fully support the school. I would love to be able to help, and I will help with my vote, but children with special needs and children with difficulties need to be looked after. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Frank. As ever, always looking out for the children with special needs. Thank you. Thank you.
Try again. Thank you, Councillor Frank. You know, I think when we look at an answer like less, that is very difficult. And certainly for the head teacher and the staff of the school to be able to consider that is very difficult. I think the key word is less, not withdrawal, and it'll be targeted work that will go on. The new curriculum for Wales allows a progression-based curriculum, which means that this restructure of classes within the school will work for the delivery of the curriculum, and therefore the support within classes will remain, but there will be fewer classes in the school that will be delivering that curriculum to. So that's, in terms of the less, it's not none. It's about targeting that support and really modelling that curriculum in a slightly different way. Fortunately, the curriculum for Wales allows us to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to bring that to the attention of the school, and I fully support the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Frank. Thanks for that answer. Who's next? Councillor Paul.
I've got one specific question and a wider point to raise. The specific question is within the documentation, and as you know, Chair, I raised a number of questions about this report prior to the meeting and had an actual meeting with Julie, Mike, Amanda and David on Friday about this. But the specific question I want to ask is, there are no comments or assessment in the school's loan application pro forma on the impact on equalities and the Welsh language. And so I think we do need to have those matters. I don't know why there's a gap on the pro forma, but I think that question specifically needs to be answered. In terms of the wider issue and move away from this school, I see my responsibility as a county councillor and as an LEA governor to look at the bigger picture. And I think the bigger picture does need to be addressed this morning, because we need to get the message out quite clearly to both head teachers, governing bodies and LEA governors about the overall situation. Now, I'm not going to make any predictions going forward, but we all know the hard reality, because it's in the public domain, that we're looking for a shortfall at the moment of something like 20 million for 2024-25. So that's a concern. We know at the moment, and I'm not predicting this, but it's in the press, inflation is expected to be 4 or 5% in March next year when we set a budget again. So we can all be aware that there may be, again, significant cuts to school budgets for 24-25. So the message we need to get out to head teachers, governing bodies, LEA governors, is we've got to take decisive action in this financial year to manage that system, so that when we come to 24-25, we do not have a whole stream of schools coming to us, whether you call them bridging loans or loans, because that's not what we want. Now, people can say that public services have been starved of funds, but the reality is we have to deal with the reality, and there isn't any holiday from that reality. It's really tough and grim, and we need to get that message out now to our schools and to our parents, because it's not going to go away. You know, it's not going to go away, and so that's the issue that needs to be out there today.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. I know that the wider issue is going to be tackled. We have a report coming. Did you say, Councillor Julie, there is
Thank you,
further
Chair. Yeah, we'll
report?
have the opportunity to look at the new process in terms of loans, but obviously in terms of funding for schools, we have the School Budget Forum, which is the appropriate forum, which is chaired by a head of a secondary school and has representation from numerous areas, smaller primaries, larger primaries, Welsh schools, special schools, the PRU, everything. So School Budget Forum is definitely an area where some of that specific detail can be discussed. But yeah, in terms of the loan process, that will come back. But that's why I wanted to highlight that this morning is about Ysgol Cynfran, and I don't really want it to be drawn into a political football today. I want us to be able to discuss why we have the head teacher and business manager here this morning. So, and there'll be opportunity going forward to discuss the approach that we take in the coming months and years. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Julie. And I think Councillor Paul's question about the impact on equalities in the Welsh language on the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Paul. Just to assure you, we do have a plan in place, and we're confident with the headcount that we'll have in the school beyond the redundancy process will be sufficient to continue to deliver it.
Can you be a bit more specific about your plan, please?
Well, it's an inclusive plan. It takes into account not just the Welsh language, but also equalities. So that's very much at the fore of what we do in terms of our curriculum delivery. So Welsh is very much an important aspect of that through the curriculum for Wales. And it's an overarching theme now, as opposed to a specific subject. So we'd expect to see aspects of the delivery of the programme taking place through the curriculum.
So can I just ask again, in terms of take, for example, Welsh language, presumably then we are going to prioritise securing teachers who can teach through the Welsh language.
We're very lucky with the quality of our first language and second language Welsh speakers in the classrooms. It's part of the matrix that was created by the governing body's staffing committee that took that into account. So it is very much part of the criteria that the school is adopting through the governing body and the redundancy process.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Councillor Paul. We now move on. Next question, Councillor Gareth, please.
Yes, thank you. Just very briefly on the general thing, I've seen probably 3-4 reports in my time in the council talking about pupil numbers across the whole of Conwy County. So it'd be really handy, I think, for head teachers and governing bodies if each school were given heads up on trends and things that we were spotting and the implication of those trends. to, very similar to what Councillor Paul was saying, so that people can actually make some informed decisions sooner rather than later. As far as this specific one is concerned, again, it's those pupil numbers that I think seem to be causing the issues. And my concern is that we're not setting you up to fail, because having to repay the capital amounts back actually takes more out of your budget. And if the pupil numbers continue on the trend they're saying, you're actually going to be paying £100 a head per pupil just in capital repayments. So I was just wondering, it's not clear from the papers as to how many children there are in that catchment area who could be going to the school. Are there ones who are going outside? And if there's pressures on budgets, does that drive parents to send their children to other schools? How much capacity is there to drive them? When does it become uneconomic for the school? What pupil numbers are there that make it really difficult? And if they continue to fall at 10 a year, you're almost looking crudely at losing a teacher every 3 years, because that's a whole class gone.
Is the microphone on?
There we go. That we do share that information with schools around their numbers. We look at projected numbers. We do that twice a year using 2 different data sources. So that information is shared. In the case of Ysgol Cynfran, and I'm sure Owen might come in here, they are projected numbers. As we've said, we know that the school is working hard to increase its capacity, and actually there are a number of children who come into the school from outside of the catchment area in this particular instance. We also know that there are more children taking up places in nursery than it was projected in the data that's on the report, because that's now been formally acknowledged and shared with schools. So, that is a piece of work that our schools are doing. I know that within Cynfran it's a piece of work, and I know there's been a lot of work around the building and the site and making that attractive to the community and beyond. And like I say, a number of children and their families actually use Cynfran School who are outside of that catchment area. I think Owen will probably pick up a bit more detail there. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Owen, if you'd like to pop your mic's on, lovely.
Thank you. You're getting the hang of it now. I think based on our most recent analysis, 46% of our children come to school from outside of catchment. So we're very proud of the number of families who do consciously drive, catch the bus to come to us.
Thank you. Let's not talk about carbon footprints this morning. So, are you content, Councillor Garrett?
Yes, thank you. As I said, I've just got a concern that the capital repayments come out of your budget, and you've got a less, roughly £100 less per head to spend on the children, and then it just makes your job even more difficult to a certain extent, doesn't it? Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Next is Councillor Mandy, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got the same concern as you, Gareth. I have to say that by giving them the loan, or we actually, just putting a stick and plaster on, and it's hard to say that when I know schools, are suffering. But if you have got decreasing numbers, you're going to have less, of a budget going forward. So I just find it really difficult, and I don't like the fact that the only way we're going forward that you're looking to make these savings is by making job cuts, because to me it's got to be about the children as well. But I do just have a couple of questions, so please bear with me. First and foremost, I can actually see the figures that you've actually put down for the pupils coming into the school. What I want to ask is there actually an increase or a decrease of kids coming in up to the nursery school? First and foremost.
Thank you. There's been a fall in pupil births, I think we'd acknowledge, since COVID. So we're still seeing some of the impact of that coming in. We're very lucky that as part of the extension to the school during COVID, we've got a very fit for 21st century preschool as well now. we can't ignore the fact that some families who may have come to preschool are not at the moment because of working from home, because of cost pressures, all of the unknowns, or those that we have no control over. But as Claire said, we're seeing an increase in numbers already, 3 more coming into both nursery and reception than when the report was written. What we can't say with any certainty is what that might also translate into. With David's support, the governing body will be looking at the medium-term financial planning as well, where David can provide some expertise on that to support the school through what in effect may be the next round of financial challenge.
Okay, thank you. The next question, I have 2 more, if you don't mind, is do the school actually buy into the local education authority for service level agreements? They do.
We buy into every single one that we can afford. We don't go external. They're all through Conway.
Fabulous. That's a good thing to hear. And then finally, and I don't know whether this is more for yourself or Julie, but if the school's unable to balance the budget, as I said, we have a statutory duty to do so. Does that actually mean they'll go into special measures by not doing so?
Councillor Julie, are you taking that one?
It wouldn't mean through an ESTIN situation, special measures. No, it's our internal financial system that requires schools to balance the budget by the 30th of June. I think that's, yeah.
So what? Oh, go on.
So our backstop at the moment is the school loan process. So because Conway is one of, I think it's maybe the only or one of 2 authorities in Wales to have a requirement in our scheme where a school must balance the budget every year, other authorities have set up a licensed deficit scheme, so they can set a longer term approach to getting back to a balanced budget. But because we do have the current arrangements, then our only way for a school in this situation, if they're in an extreme situation, is to have a loan. So that is our current backstop position. Okay.
Yeah, and in terms of obviously the work that the school has done, I think it's important to highlight as well that they've made changes internally as well. So there are some mergings of classroom sizes, so that they're teaching across 2 classrooms in order to address the sort of falling role. But I think it's important to highlight, Claire touched on it. I've seen predictions over the years, and we're doing a lot of work currently on predictions for pupil numbers. And I think we were about 300 more pupils last year than we were anticipating in terms of that primary age. So it is incredibly difficult. And then when you have a school where it attracts people from outside the catchment area, which typically is near anyway, because sometimes the catchment can fall quite close to the school. I know for my local school, that's certainly the case. It's really hard to predict because a level of that is parental choice. So it is hard in this situation, to be sure. And that's why, in terms of the planning, it only became apparent in the last 12 months that the pupil numbers had fallen. So that is a process, and obviously David will continue to work with the school as the head teacher has told us this morning, to look at that and to have a medium-term financial plan in order to address where we're at with pupil numbers. But it may be that we see an increase. It's a quite transient population here as well. You have people who come here to work, and that impacts as well, and it's really hard to predict that. So I think you have to work on the projections, which are that the birth rate is lower, but there are so many things that influence that it can often be quite significantly different. So I just wanted to highlight that. Claire, I think, wanted to comment as well. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Julie. Claire?
On that. And just so to pick up, I guess, on Councillor Mandy's stick and plaster analogy, really, I think in this case, it is a little bit of that, because had voluntary redundancy been able to generate the savings, then we wouldn't be here right now. The reason we're sat here is because the school has to go through that process of redundancy, and the timelines around that mean that they cannot meet the requirement to set that balanced budget by the 30th of June. And so it is in effect a sticking plaster to get them through that timeline, to that process. And, you know, the expectation is that the school will be able to pay off a significant chunk of that capital fairly quickly.
I think that's just the concern a few of us have here today, is that, you know, they won't be able to pay that off because they're still going to be in, you know, the same situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Mandy, and for the answers there. Next, we've got Councillor Anne online and Councillor Harry in the room.
Thanks, Chair. Excuse me. I mean, my heart, like Councillor Frank, goes out to the school team, because I can hear and read that there's been a lot of work gone on in the last couple of years, which has included shedding staff, and yet they still find themselves in this position of being 141 grand at the start of the process, short in funding. And of course, as we know, it's not going to get any better anytime soon. So I do have reservations about, we haven't got the full picture in terms of pupil projection numbers, because obviously there's only two years forward in the report, i.e. September 24 and September 25. So we haven't got the projection figures for over the 5-year period. And I'm not sure I sense much confidence really from what's been said, that this is just a blip in terms of the pupil numbers decreasing, because we do know we have a decreasing pupil population within the county. So that does concern me. And also, so does affordability, really. I mean, I'm very sympathetic to the request for a loan, but I also do think strategically, we do need to think about a licence deficit scheme. We do obviously allow other services or sub-services to overspend, and obviously in the round, we obviously manage our services. Currently, we're not doing that and allowing that for schools, although David, I think, has already mentioned that other councils do. And I think this time next year, I'm not sure that we will be able to operate without a licence deficit scheme, because I don't think the current loan scheme will be viable, given the depletion of reserves and school funds, on top of additional reduced funding. So in terms of this particular school, it's the affordability of the 5-year term, because okay, that we're in a bridging situation, I get that, and there's going to be one-off or a recurring reduction in X amount of staffing. We're not quite sure what that figure is. But this time next year, there's a potential that the school will have a further 10% reduction, and actually still have to deliver its statutory duties and pay off the loan and meet all of the other requirements of it. And then additionally, the year after, and the year after, in the year after. So I don't know if anybody here can actually give somebody like me the assurance that the robustness of this recovery plan will actually mean that the school won't be back here this time next year and be unable to repay its loan, because actually it's going to have to sort of make further cuts. So that's just my concern, and hats off to the school, because, you know, patently I can see you've done all that's within your power, but you just don't have the funding.
Who's going to answer? Oh, David, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Anne.
Thank you. The application is based on 5 years at the moment, to allow the school more time to plan and to implement the plan. Because the loan is coming down from 67 to it's hoped 44, or in that area, then that's obviously going to take a significant burden off by paying back less. Plus there'll be the whatever saving there is this financial year from any compulsory redundancies. So that will, but we couldn't put that in the application because it's not confirmed what the amount will be. So that 44 will reduce again. So the amount to be paid back is going to be significantly different to what the application is, but we couldn't reflect that in the application at the time.
But that's only in this current year, David, surely, because what happens in year 2, 3, 4 and 5, this recovery plan, because one-off Welsh Government grants you can't depend upon. Who's to know that there will be the recovery grant funding in these following 4 years? And that's where the robustness of my question sort of lies, really, because, you know, the bottom line is there's potentially 10% going to come off in 24, 25, potentially the same in 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28. And that's the 5-year plan time period that this loan is actually over. Because if you've reduced your class numbers, and obviously you're reducing your staff complements, where else is there left to go? How are you going to find this money in years 2, 3, 4 and 5?
Thank you, Councillor. And David, if you'd like to finish.
Okay, so yeah, accept those points. With the focus being on the loan, then the majority of, well, the loan will be possible to be paid back. And a number of schools are in the same position as Ysgol Cynfran, where there will be changes in pupil numbers. So they'll have that 5-year plan, and that's where I'm working with the governors and the head on that medium-term financial plan to cope with the changes in pupil numbers. So that I can't see the loan having a significant effect on top of the medium-term financial plan, which is dealing with the changes in pupil numbers, because of the amount of capital that needs repaying back having reduced.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. Thank you, Councillor Ann, for that question. Right, next we go to Councillor Harry, please.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Mae gen I 2 cwestiwn. I'm looking at the Vice Chair. I hope I got that right. I can see Gwenol is online. And I remember what Gwenol said recently is the Welsh language champion we should all try. So I wanted to have a go. There might be a slightly longer contribution from me in Welsh next time. But my gen I 2 cwestiynau. I'll take them one at a time, if that's okay. I appreciate we want to focus on the individual loan in this circumstance and not look at the wider issues here, but I'm conscious if we look at, I think it's paragraphs 6.4 and 6.7 in the report, we talk about these loans being backed up to 30% of our total school balances. Now, the report says that this loan would be within that amount of our school balances that would support these loans, but what I want to understand is how much headroom would there be left within that figure? I'm conscious of some of the comments we've already heard this morning that there may be other schools in a similar position. I think it'd be useful for us to understand if this loan is agreed, does it take us to almost that limit and then there isn't the headroom to support other schools later this year? So that's my first question, and then I will come in with my second one once I have an answer.
Thank you, Councillor Harry. David or Councillor Julie?
Thank you, Councillor Harry, for your question. Yeah, in terms of balances, we're currently at an estimated around 8.4 million in balances. So 30% of that is 2.533 million. With the current loans that are still ongoing, there are 2. There's 649,000 outstanding there. So with the Cynfran, if it was 67,000, but obviously we've already mentioned the grant funding that we're still waiting on confirmation for all of that. But even if it was 67,000, that would mean that it would be 735,000 in total, but obviously we can hopefully take 20,000 off. That's about 715,000 of the 2.53 million, which is the 30%. So that's the difference. It's not a big impact in terms of the balances at the minute. And as I said, we'll have opportunity to look at that going forward as to how we manage that. And obviously license deficits is something that we have discussed, and that will form part of the consultation for that process. So I hope that addresses your first question.
That does. Thank you. The second one I've got quickly, and I'm conscious Mike mentioned earlier that these reports, we've had them before in the past where we've had loan requests from schools. I seem to remember, and I recall it being former Councillor Dave Cowan's who picked up on this point, I think in respect of either Aberconwy or Emrys ap Iwan. But I recall there being an issue in the past where there was a possibility that these loans could attract interest. I personally think that that would be frankly bizarre, considering we're looking at moving money around from different parts of what is at the end of the day one council. So I just wanted to check, there's no interest attached to this loan, is there?
Who's going to take that hot potato?
Apologies in the sense of I'm not aware of what the rules are within the scheme at the moment. So there is interest, is there? I think to the extent there will be interest, you know, I absolutely take your point, Councillor Harry, that certainly we shouldn't be profiting from an internal interest charge. But obviously to the extent as an authority we have borrowing, we are incurring interest cost to us as a council. So to the extent there would be interest, it would only be a recovery of the interest we're incurring as a council, not as a profit effectively.
Can I come back in on that? This is probably my ignorance here, so a bit of a better understanding on my part would probably be helpful. But you've mentioned about obviously centrally the council would have borrowing costs, but isn't this coming out of our already held reserves? So why are we borrowing? I'm wondering, is it a case of those reserves generate interest at present and therefore by taking money out they wouldn't generate interest? I'm unsure, but I'd appreciate a better understanding. I don't think it's so much an issue of the council profiting, because at the end of the day, the school is part of the council, the money is staying within the council, whether we like it or like it not. I just think it's probably, we could see that we're not allocating the money to where it needs to be to deliver the best services locally, which in this case should surely be the schools. So I'd just like to understand, why are we borrowing to fund this if it's being backed by our reserves?
Yeah, as you say, we're not borrowing in the sense it is backed by those reserves, but our global sum of reserves, if we're reducing the level of our reserves by giving a loan, then effectively that means that the cash we're investing, as you say, is less by that amount, and therefore our net position means that we won't be earning as much interest essentially as we would have been. Yeah.
Can I just come back in again
briefly?
So do we actually know then what the financial liability for the school of the interest is? I mean, I'm conscious that the total amount, am I right in thinking 67,000 roughly? What portion of that would be made up by interest coming back to Conway centrally?
Off the top of my head, Councillor Harry, I'm not au fait. If we'd need to go away and actually do the calculations based on the actual loan that we anticipate taking out, and perhaps if I can advise you at a later date of what those will be. Interest rates currently though are about 4.5%. So.
Thank you, Amanda. I think today has thrown up, and apologies to our colleagues from Cynfran. I think today has thrown up, we need a much broader discussion on this topic, don't we? I know we're dealing purely with Councillor David. Yeah, we're dealing purely with this today, but there definitely needs to be a wider debate because a lot of questions have been thrown up today. So would welcome education coming back to here, or I see Councillor Hannah on whether it goes to education to broaden this out and get to the bottom, because we're clearly going to be facing these sort of situations more and more. So thank you for that. You okay now, Councillor Harry? That's all right. Councillor Paul, I'm indulging you. One question.
I'm sorry, I didn't intend to follow up, but two pieces of information have been shared which are new to me. Julie referred to in this financial year, we've had 300 learners we weren't anticipating. And if you remember in the budget discussions, Amanda told us that we were losing about, I think it was 550k this year because of falling rolls from Welsh Government. So I just want to clarify with Amanda, if we've got 300 learners we weren't anticipating, will we be getting extra grant from Welsh Government for those 300 learners?
Well, just to clarify, so first off, you're correct that in the 23-24 settlement we had a reduction of 550,000 in the settlement as a result of change in pupil numbers. Now, there's a little bit of a complexity to that in the sense of it's a reallocation across Wales. So to some extent, it's about our proportionate relationship of our pupil numbers compared to the proportionate relationship of other councils' pupil numbers. So it's a redistribution balancing across Wales to nil. So, but putting that aside, I mean, in general principle, as our pupil numbers increase or decrease, it is reflected through the settlement. There is a lag in the context of the data, the timing of the data that they use in the settlement. But effectively, yes, if we in turn see an uptick in our pupil numbers, we will see a positive distribution through the settlement.
Thank you. And
microphone.
Building on Mandy's point, because I think Mandy's question was very significant. And when I read this report, I did also read the most recent Estin report for this school. And you'll remind me, I can't remember if it was 2013 or 2018 you had your last Estin report, but I think Mandy's point is crucial, because obviously Estin will now be alerted that we've got another school in a loan situation. And do we know what the process is in relation to Estin when a situation like this comes up? And do they then, Estin, put this school on some sort of watch list or whatever?
If you'd like to answer that.
The short answer is no to that. In terms of when Estin do inspect the school, and they actually formally inspect, they'll look at leadership and management, and that looks at all aspects, but it's not something that we flag with Estin, nor would the school be going on a watch list. This is about the school being able to balance their budget by the date that's been set by us as a local authority, and us giving them the opportunity to fulfil that requirement.
And when was the last Estin report?
It was 2018.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, could I just respond to that as well? You know, as mentioned before, of the 22 local authorities in Wales, 21 of those allow licence deficits, which basically is what we're doing here, but we just manage it as a loan process. If Estin were to visit all those schools that have licence deficits and somehow consider that poor management, or any term that you might like to use, then that would be practically every school in Wales that has a licence deficit. So, you know, this has nothing to do with the management of the school. You know, I'm very confident that the pupils at this school, that the governing body are doing a fantastic job along with the senior leadership team in teaching and learning, and everything that's positive in the classroom, and everything I've seen has evidenced that. This today is purely a process that, because we don't allow licence deficits, that is the opportunity that we have here. And we will have, as I've said, Chair, and as you've highlighted, the opportunity to look at these other points going forward to see what is the most appropriate way to manage this, if we're in need of that in the future. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that. I'm very confident, and I've known the head teacher for a long time from having visited and worked closely together on a number of different things, and I'm confident that the school's doing a very good job with their pupils. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Julie. Next, I've got Councillor David. You'll be delighted to know you're the only Councillor David on the call today, so take it away, please.
Thank you, Chair. It was interesting that in response to one of the questions that 43% of the pupils come from out of area, and we do have a policy of net zero by 2030. If we're successful in persuading people not to travel, not to use cars for schools and other things, would that affect pupil numbers, and would that affect the loan repayment over 5 years? I think there's a bit of a conflict here when there's such a high proportion of the pupils that are coming from out of area. The second question is there a plan B if today we decide not to approve the loan? Is there a plan B in place? Has the governing body got a plan B? Thank you.
In terms of the first one, it's parental choice, and that's not something that we can change. in terms of schools. That's the way that all authorities work across the whole of the UK, to my knowledge. And parental choice is important in terms of a number of different issues, but often, as I've said, my local school is around the same level as this. 40% to 50% are outside the catchment area, but they're 2 streets away from the school. So it's not as simple as saying, you think the catchment area is a perfect geographically circle that comes around the school. It just doesn't work that way. It may be that their catchment school is further away than Ysgol Cynfran. So that it's not as simplistic as that. And parental choice is really important. And I think we shouldn't discourage parental choice. And that's something that's, I think, written in law somewhere that's the way that certainly the Welsh Government and the UK Government as a whole manage choice. In terms of the second point, I'll hand over to Claire, the second question.
There isn't one. Again, there isn't a plan B. This is, the option really that's open to the schools who find themselves unable to set a balanced budget by that 30th of June deadline in this authority. So this is the means by which they can do that. And again, I'll just remind that this is because of the protracted length of time due to compulsory redundancy process that the school has got to go through. Thank you.
You content?
Well, just to come back quickly, parental choice is important, but we are pushing the net zero as well, and that's important too. So I think people want to be aware of that. Yeah. Is it well thought out, the proposal, possibly? Is the remote loan going to be repaid? I think there's been, from a number of speakers, there's some doubts really, isn't there? There's some doubts. So
I think Amanda wants to come in now. Thank you.
I just wanted to come in and give the committee some assurance, really, in the sense of I think to be clear, I think it is very much a bridging loan, i.e. a loan to allow a short period of readjustment of the underlying budget, which is being put in place and planned through compulsory redundancy. So, it isn't the case that the school have no ability or no plans to effectively come back to a balanced budget position. There's a very clear line of how they will get back to that balanced budget position actually within a short period of time, and certainly therefore from a sort of a financial planning point of view, that to me seems absolutely appropriate. Just touching on the slightly wider issues that have been mentioned, I think it's important to recognise that the combination of Claire's team and David and finance are working very closely with schools to help them manage their budget position and look into the future around predicted pupil numbers, the chances of further shortfall, further reductions in budgets, etc., to help them plan into the future to potentially live with less resources going forward in that timeline. And to the extent we will come back with discussions around appropriate loan or license deficits arrangements, but ultimately, we need to work with schools to help them manage a balanced budget position into the future. To the extent a license deficit arrangement could be put in place, ultimately as a council, we ourselves have to set an overall balanced budget, and we ourselves have no legal authority to run our revenue budget from borrowing. So effectively, we have to set balanced budgets across the council as a whole and across schools. So a situation where we know people are running schools and or the council are living with budgets that are unsustainable isn't obviously something we can do into the future. So that's why it's critical that the teams are working with schools to help them manage their longer term financial position. And as I say, I can give you assurance that we're doing that very closely, and with the increasing financial pressure, the need for that and the need for that close liaison is ever more, and that's those arrangements are being put in place. So we will come back to you about that sort of bigger picture issue in the future. But for today, in the context of this school, certainly from my point of view, I can give you assurance that I feel satisfied that it is very much a short-term bridging loan, and the school have detailed plans in place to allow them to come back to an underlying budget, balanced budget position. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks for that. Right, I need a proposition from members 2.1. I very briefly got Councillor Harry, then Councillor Gareth, incredibly quickly, please, because we're 20 minutes over. So,
Diolch,
Harry.
Cheryl. I only stuck my hand up very quickly then because I was going to make a proposition if that would be helpful. I was going to propose a recommendation effectively, which is that we recommend to Cabinet that they approve the loan request with one small addition, which I'll be very clear around the wording, which is, and we ask Cabinet to consider it being an interest-free loan. So I want to be very clear. We don't have figures here today. It is asking that Cabinet consider. Happy
Thank
to
you
make
very
that as a
much
proposal.
for that, Councillor Harry. And you'll second. Excellent. You're okay, Councillor Gareth, now.
Well, all I was going to ask was just to help my own clarification.
Yeah.
Is that, as I understand it, a lot of counties, schools in counties run 3-year budgets, and just wondered whether if we were on a 3-year budget cycle, whether it would have helped the school, and if it helped this school, help other schools manage out these peaks and troughs in their funding.
Yeah, really good point there, Councillor Gareth. And I'm sure that Amanda, have you any thoughts on that?
I agree with you. It would be a useful approach. I guess the complexity and what we would need to work out in considering it is how we sit that within an annual budget cycle that we have as an authority, because when we are unsighted on future funding levels, it's difficult to therefore know how I guess the global position of the authority could be built into that forecast. But I think certainly in the context of moving to doing a much more detailed medium-term financial plan per school based on forecast pupil numbers, I think would certainly be a very sensible thing. The difficulty would be, as I say, the overlaying of the annual process. But more than happy to go away and consider how we could look to move to something sensible towards that approach for schools.
Thank you, Amanda. That's really helpful. And obviously, as I said before, this needs to come back to this committee, I presume, for a wider discussion, possibly joint with our education colleagues. So we've had a proposition which Matt is going to very helpfully read out for us. And it's been, well, seconded by Councillor Paul, but we just want to be absolutely clear on what our recommendation is today.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I've got Cabinet approve the request from Ysgol Cynfran for financial support in the form of a loan, and that Cabinet consider it being an interest-free loan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Matt. Okay, members, can we move to the vote on that? And just to remind you that this is a vote for members of Frost, though we welcome our education colleagues. So could I have a show of hands in
Chair,
in
could
the
I
room?
second Councillor Harry, just to start us off?
Yeah.
Chair, it has been seconded by Councillor Paul. Thank you.
All right, okay, couldn't see.
Thank you, Councillor Anne. Okay, hands, everybody. 1, 2, 3, 7. 5, 4, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 5. So, is anybody against? Anyone abstain? No, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you to our colleagues from Education Ysgol Cynfran. You are free to leave. The torture is over. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we now move on to item 7, and we are we're 20 minutes adrift, or maybe 25. Best laid plans of mice and men and all that. So item 7, going to be introduced corporate plan performance measures proposals for 23-24, pages 63 to 90. Councillor Chris is going to introduce it. Councillor Chris Cater, just be clear. And Amanda is then going to present the report. So
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. So abiding by the Local Government and Election Wales Act 2021, we as a local authority have to establish performance measures to monitor how well the council is delivering its wellbeing objectives and supporting the actions outlined in our 2022-2027 corporate plan. So as part of this, and it is statutory work, where appropriate, performance targets are set to be part of the evaluation process. Annual targets are proposed, but these need to be appropriate and meaningful. So the leader, relevant cabinet members and scrutiny chairs have already attended a series of meetings with the services. So this report can be in front of you today. Services may propose changes to the methodologies, etc. And in fact, Amanda's highlighted the changes in red. And if a performance measure is proposed to be removed, this is in grey. So Amanda, our corporate performance and improvement manager, is here to take us through the proposals. These will then go chair to cabinet and then to full council. I would just like to emphasise that in this current difficult financial climate, our approach to service delivery has to be realistic and achievable and within our present resources. So if I could just emphasise that, Chair, thanks.
Very much for that, Councillor Chris. Amanda, if you'd like to present, thank you.
I'm just checking that everybody online can hear me.
Thumbs up, please. Yes.
Good. Okay. Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Chris. So just to add to what Councillor Chris has already said in his introduction, so it is a statutory requirement for us to keep our performance under review. Members will recall that back in October last year, we published and approved our new corporate plan covering the 5-year period from 2022 to 2027. So the list of measures that are in the appendix, and the appendix is on page 69, many of those measures are new and were new at that time. So services have had to establish methodologies in some cases to gather that information and interpret it. You will see in the appendix, what I'll just talk you through in a moment, that there are several measures that where no targets are proposed. Hopefully, to reassure you, that doesn't mean that services are not intending to perform to their very best within the available resources that they have. And as Councillor Chris has already mentioned, and as we're all aware, we are in a very challenging financial situation. So that has been taken into account when services have discussed and proposed their targets very, very carefully. They have also looked at any historic data for measures to inform the proposals. We have to obviously bear in mind that within that historic data, there were 3 years of a global pandemic, which has affected performance in some areas. So where targets are able to be proposed, where they are deemed to be realistic and achievable based on what we know at the moment, and looking at our historic data where it's relevant to do so, and where services are able to provide the resources to deliver to the proposed standard. That's where targets have been proposed. Where we have a number of measures where they are either new measures or due to the pandemic, data has not been available or not fully available, you'll see that there are proposals to monitor how the measures behave as we go forward. So that's where there are proposals.
£10 for my charity, please, Councillor Paul. Thank you. Sorry, Amanda.
That's okay. That's where there are proposals to monitor how the measures behave. So that's where we've identified they will be trend measures, and some of which are commentary measures, so a commentary is provided. The process that has led us to this report being in front of you today is very in-depth. As Councillor Chris has already said, there are target setting meetings that take place with every service, looking at every measure that's in front of you in the appendix. And there is a lot of discussion and debate around what is realistic and what is achievable in terms of a target. And again, discussion and agreement at those meetings as to whether a target should be set at all, based on the environment and resources available. So in a nutshell, that's what the report is outlining. So if I just quickly just refer you to the appendix, which contains all of the corporate plan measures. In addition to that, at the end of the appendix document, there are additional measures which services have identified they would like to report to Finance and Resources Scrutiny as part of the mid-year and the annual corporate plan performance report. So those are listed after each of the 9 outcomes, and the measures are listed there. So as Councillor Chris has said, where there are changes being proposed, they're highlighted in red. Explanations have been provided where those changes are proposed, and also in many cases where a target is not being proposed. Where services have discussed and proposed that measures are to be removed, those are shaded in grey. So hopefully that's laid out clearly in the appendix for you to see. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you for an excellent report, Amanda, and presentation as usual, very thorough. I'd just like to thank the heads of service as well who attended today for this item. So questions, please, members. You never let me down, Councillor Paul. Thank you. You first. David, Gareth. Okay. Councillor Paul first, please.
Thanks, Chris and Amanda. I mean, the most worrying thing I think about the report is the lack of data. And so I want to ask, when will we next see the next sort of tranche of data relevant to these priority areas? Will it be in the service provision 6 monthly meetings, or will we have a further report on this with more robust data in the document? Because in terms of monitoring performance, obviously it's not just quantitative, it's qualitative as well. But there are lots of not availables in this document. And though I understand the reasons for that, we do need to get back as soon as possible to as robust data as we can.
Thanks, Councillor Paul. Yes, apologies. I should have also mentioned that where it does say the annual data is not yet available, that's because services are still working on finalising the year-end data. So where we've been able to get the year-end data, that is included. You're absolutely right. I think you've answered your own question there. So you're very familiar with the process now that the year-end data for 22-23 will be included in the service performance review meetings that have been set up now, to which all members have been invited. And I would encourage you all to attend as many as you can. So give the service performance reviews another plug there. But also you're absolutely right, there will be a year-end report coming to scrutiny in October, showing all of the data for these measures, with the commentaries provided as to the explaining the performance. So yes, you will receive that information.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for that question, Councillor Paul. Next, we've got Councillor David, then Councillors Gareth and Harry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's page, let's look at the page, 77 and 78. It's on affordable housing, the targets we're setting. I think we've got no data for 22-23. I think it was 72 new affordable housing units, and the proposed target is now 75. It's just not enough, is it really? You know, the targets, have we given up fight to actually house everybody that's homeless now? Have we given up the fight? This target is so specifically low that, you know, obviously I've got concerns about it. If you could somebody actually explain to me what we're doing to actively promote more affordable housing in the county, because that is such a low target for us, depending with the number of homeless people, 75. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Have we got an officer here from housing, please? No. Oh, thank you very much, Councillor.
I'll take it in the absence of an officer. Yeah, I think we've got to be realistic about what we can do and what we can't do as well. So I do accept that obviously we need a lot more. I agree with you entirely, Councillor David. We need a lot more affordable housing, and we've got, you know, a huge amount of people that are in temporary accommodation compared to previous years. I think it was asked, we didn't have a number on originally, and I think it was asked, I think it was Councillor Harry that had asked for a target to be put on, so that we can keep an eye on it. There are lots that's going on in regard to trying to get more and increased numbers of affordable housing. As you know, we're not stockholding, so we're relying on our partners with the RSLs, and we've had lots of positive conversations about how we can not only build more housing but bring back other housing into affordable housing stock. So it's not just kind of a one size fits all. We've got the new housing boards, which we've got representatives from scrutiny on there as well, trying to work together and with our partners to really try and boost that. But in regards to the arbitrary number, I mean, I would love to be able to come back and say we've doubled the target. It is a target, it's not a you know, we can go over that, which is great, but I just think we need to be careful about what we're setting ourselves, because what building takes, as I'm finding increasingly, a long time to get everything through from Welsh Water and other places, in order to be able to build those houses. So it is a target, but you can rest assured that we are doing everything we possibly can, and I personally am doing everything that I can to try and increase that affordable housing stock, because we do recognise that this is a huge problem.
Thank you very much, Councillor Emily. Could just a second, if Reen wanted to come in before you come back.
Just to confirm really what Councillor Emily has said, I think it is a target, and hopefully we'll overachieve, but there is a leading time, and also there's a financial envelope that we need to work within. So those are constraints. So we have a number there which won't alleviate the affordable housing crisis that we've got. But you also need to bear in mind that there are two targets there. The other one is the intermediate one, which is below it. Which clearly there's a need for intermediate housing as well. So that there's an overarching theme here, isn't there, about a lack of housing generally, and it's that conveyor belt that we need, from housing our homelessness through to providing social housing, but also to providing intermediate and open market housing. It's that mix that we need to accommodate all the needs within the county, isn't it? So that's the purpose of the boards. There's a lot of work going on at the moment, trying to front load a lot of this, so that we hopefully in the years to come will see the fruition of that coming through.
Thank you, Reen.
Have we any figures on this 75? What percentage of the actual need is it? Do we know, where we have a rough estimate, what the need is, and what percentage of that need would be covered if we did build the 75 houses? Oh,
I don't have that information to hand, I'm afraid, Councillor David, but I'll go back to the service and I'll ask them to respond to you on that point.
Thank you for that. Thank you for answering, Councillor Emily. I know there are staffing issues within housing, so thank you very much for coming in with that. Right, next we have Councillor Gareth.
Thanks. I was just looking at page 83, section M 6.5. Just really wanted to, you know, clarify my understanding of, are we going to keep residential care, domiciliary care and respite care separate? Because it says underneath, it says amend to total number of services for adults provided during the year. So personally, I'd like to keep the three of them separate and rather have numbers similar to what David was saying, actually have a percentage of achievement against needs, rather than, you know, it's all very well saying we'll provide 500 places, but if the demand is 5,000, it's not so good. If the demand is 500 and we've provided 500, it's success.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Kat, do you want to?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we were proposing to change the measure, because it was the bit about the adults.
Kat, please siarad i fewn i'r mic, please.
Oh. Bring it closer. Is that better? It was the we felt that it was actually the adult started bit that wasn't very meaningful. It was the total number of packages that when we discussed this with our portfolio holder, that was more meaningful. So we can break it down into those areas. A percentage, and I suppose it's a percentage of what? Because when you say need, we'd have to say assessed need, because otherwise need is quite a generic term. So it's a percentage of what, and being clear about that. So we could look at that, but we'd have to be clear that that would be the percentage of assessed need of assessments undertaken that we've actually met, rather than need in general. So yeah, it depends what members feel, whether that's more valuable rather than the actual figure, or do we put the actual figure and the percentage. But we would have to work with our data team in terms of it would have to be the assessed need.
Yeah, I can understand the assessed need. That makes sense. But personally, it's, you know, I find it really useful to have an understanding between how much assessed need is out there and how much have we actually provided. And, you know, if they both match, then it's absolutely really successful, you know, whether it be 100 or 500, you know, that should be the measure of success. And I think the three areas are quite distinct and important areas. So, you know,
yeah, we do break down the data according to those, and that's why we've changed the daycare one.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can break that down. It's just we wanted it to be the total number of services.
And also, you know, again, it's how quickly they're actually, it's assessed, how quickly they're assessed, and how quickly the packages are actually delivered are important as well.
Yeah, and yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks for that. Would carers assessments be a good basis for those figures, because the need is in the carers assessments, isn't it?
There's a carers assessment for the carer, but there's also the assessment for the cared for, isn't there?
Yeah.
So it's
Getting
both
the two,
things.
yes, getting two together in those figures, that would be really helpful. Hate to add to your workload, but thank you, Councillor Gary. Councillors Harry and Bilwin, and Councillor Frank, did you have? Yes, Councillor Harry, please.
Yeah, I've got a question probably for a deputy leader. I think she might have seen this one coming or anticipated it, but it's around measure 4.8, and it's the point I raised last October around the target for percentage cases where homelessness has been prevented. And obviously we seem to have a target up until the outbreak of the pandemic, when the legislative and also the practical landscape around preventing homelessness changed. We've now come out of the pandemic. There are significant changes around that landscape prior to the pandemic, but what I'd like to know is what thinking has been given around setting a target. I remember back in October, our former strategic director for economy in place was very clear that the changes that had impacted our duties as a local authority and what we had to provide meant that really things were in probably a state of flux is the best way to describe it. But we're now a number of months on now. I'm thinking probably 6-7 months on. So what further consideration has been given to a target?
Thanks, Councillor Harry. To be completely honest, I haven't. I don't know the exact working out for the exact figure as to how we've got there. But as you know, you've rightly said, the landscape is just completely changed since the pandemic because of our duties, but also just the sheer volume of people that we're getting in. You know, we've got 600 people now that are in Tempcom, and over 800 cases that are open on the homeless register. Preventing, hopefully not all of them are going to come through in order to do that. So it's trying to balance that, as Shreyan said earlier about the financial envelope that we've got for each financial year, trying to make sure that all the strategic sites that we've identified are coming through and progress is being made on those, so that they can, because the houses aren't going to spring up overnight, unfortunately, to make sure that comes through as fast as we can, and to make sure that the need and what we're building is right. We're trying to work much closer with social care to make sure that is incorporated in a lot of this, because some of the cases are coming through are quite straightforward and some of them are very complex and increasingly so. So it's just a completely different landscape than before the pandemic and what we're dealing with. But I'll find out for you in greater detail as to how we've arrived at that particular figure.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Emily. And I know the amount of work that's going on, complex cases that we discuss on a very regular basis. It's not simple, is it? Once Reen comes in, he wants to answer. I'd just like to know where we are with the Team Hours site, please, if you could. Thanks. Reen?
Yeah, and to build on what Councillor Emily says, really, I think what has happened since this was last raised in October was the setting up of the boards, and actually what that should do will give us the platform then to set a target, a meaningful target, because what we have at the moment is a situation across Wales, actually across the majority of the United Kingdom, where there is a lack of housing and the homelessness is a crisis all over Wales, certainly all over Wales. And therefore, trying to set targets in that context is really difficult. But because of the work that's been done to proactively try and address the issues which are in our control, I think that will come through over the next few months. We will see probably what we've put in place there to try and bring those numbers down, and that will help us then in the longer term to set a target, because I think you could pluck a number out the air at the moment and it could be doubled, and therefore for me it's a meaningless target in those circumstances. So hopefully the work we're doing will help us have the data, and it should be data driven, as been said. That's really important for all of this. We will be in a better position, hopefully. I don't know, in terms of Team Mode, do you want me? I'll address that.
Go on then.
Yes, there is work going on. The benefit of the committee, as you may know, work has had to be done through Dŵr Cymru. There's been a little bit of a delay there. I personally wrote to Dŵr Cymru a few weeks ago and had a response. So hopefully we're still looking at September as a date for that. So we're working through that, and that site also forms part of the board's remit, of course, and discussions on that site and all of the sites which are in council ownership will be continuing over the next couple of months. But hopefully the Dŵr Cymru issue, which has been the significant one, we should have some answer, or certainly a report on that within the next few months, certainly by September, hopefully.
I take my hat off to you, Chief Executive, because ex-Councillor Brian and myself have been writing to Dŵr Cymru for 16 years that I can remember, asking them to sort out the drainage, do the Team Hour farm. So if you've done it with one letter, then
I am not
well done
taking
you.
any credit
Well
at
done
all,
you.
because at the moment we'll wait and see what comes through in September.
Well, because they do know about the significant problems there and they've just not addressed it. So there we go. So you're off the hook there, Councillor Emily. Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Dilwyn next.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Gai fynd â chi tudalen 75 a 76 i rownd o M3D i M314. A maen nhw o gwmpas, dwi'm yn siŵr iawn be mae'r ffigurau ma'n ddeitha ni. Rhai agont plant a bobl ifanc sydd yn cael addysg trwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg. Mae'r ffigurau yn edrych i mi yn gymharol isal. Ydy be sgynna ni yn cyflawni yr galw, ac hefyd be da ni'n neud i hybu pwysigrwydd dwyieithrwydd i drio codi'r ffigurau yma, fel bod ni yn Conwy yn gwneud yn rhan i gael miliwn o siaradwyr Cymraeg yn y blynyddoedd nesaf yma. Dwi'n gwybod fedrwn ni gael yr ateb i hwnna rwan, ond bod o'n rhywbeth sy'n ni'n licio mwy o leiniau arno fo.
Diolch, Cynghorydd Dilwyn. Yndw, dwi'n gallu dod i fewn yn fanna. Fel da chi'n gwybod, mae'r cysga yn weithredol gyda ni rwan, a mae y papur hwnnw yn dod ger'ch bron chi, Pwyllgor Addysg a Chraffu fory, diweddariad ar y cynllun strategol y Gymraeg yn addysg. Mi fydd gynnon ni ganranna mwy diweddar erbyn diwedd tymor yr ha, ond wrth gwrs y gobaith ydy gweld heini'n cynyddu blwyddyn ar flwyddyn wrth i ni weithredu yr argymhellion sydd yn yr cysga. Felly mi fydd yr canranna yna yn cynyddu bob blwyddyn, ond wrth gwrs yn unol ar polisi categoreiddio iaith, yr un newydd mae Llywodraeth Cymru newydd i'w rhyddhau. Mae o'n broses sydd yn cymryd amser, ond yn cydweithio'n agos gyda'n ysgolion i sicrhau bod y canranna yna yn cynyddu.
Thank you very much, Larry. Are you content, Councillor Dillon?
Yep.
Yes, lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. We now go on to the final question. Councillor Frank, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks to Councillor Chris and Amanda for presenting this. There's an awful lot in this report. I think it's an excellent report. It's the basis for building on. And I don't want to be a one-issue councillor, but again, I've got to come back to page 74, where it talks about people in Conway as educated and skilled, because this is a financial question, although it relates to people's conditions of ability, the implementing of additional learning needs to ensure that all learners are supported. Yes, but that doesn't tell you that every child that suffers from ALN is different. It doesn't tell you how the education system rises into these children to develop the skills. Then we come to the children who have special needs, who are disabled. It's not in here. I spent last weekend and I spent this weekend on the prom fundraising, meeting people from all over the area, maybe the country, who have children who are disabled, and they talk highly of where their kids are cared for. And I think we should, because we do care. And I think we don't give Cyllid Gogarth the credibility, so that when parents have a child who is less able, do not want to send their child to Cyllid Gogarth because of a stigma. I think that's wrong. I think Cyllid Gogarth is university as far as disablement goes. And I just wanted to say that, because people reading this report, if they're a carer, a teacher, a support worker, will think, it's just a tick box. And absolutely, it's not a tick box. When you've just had a report about 67,000, one child who's disabled out of the county can cost you over 100,000. You know, you've got to get your priorities right. These children have a right to be educated, and it's a special education from a carer and teacher to bring out the best in these children. It's so difficult, Chair. And once again, thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Frank. And I think you and I both come from the same place as parents and grandparents. Yeah. So, and Cyllid Gogarth is a fantastic resource, widely appreciated and recognised for its excellence. So thank you very much for that. Now we're going to go to, can we have a proposal, please? I gather, Councillor Paul, about your data. Do you wish to add that into the proposal at 2.1? Excellent. Proposer and seconder, great. Okay, please could we have a show of hands on that? Thank you. 7, 2, 3 online, 4 online. Oh, and you're in here as well. So 8 is, oh, and myself, yes. Is there anyone against? Anyone abstaining? No, so that's carried. Thank you very much indeed. And thanks to all the heads of service. You are free to escape now. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's have a look. So we come back to item 8 now, the corporate procurement strategy, pages 91 to 117. Councillor Chris Cater is going to introduce, and we have Sianed here, Head of Audit and Procurement, who's going to present the report. Thank you very much.
Diolch yn fawr, Cerdded. Unwaith eto. Yeah, this is our brand new strategy, and it sets out the council's key procurement priorities through to 2028. As such, it identifies the key changes to improve the management of the external spend on goods, services and works. And of course, it's a fundamental plank supporting our corporate plan. As I've emphasised already this morning, we are in challenging times, Chair, so we need to maximise the social, environmental and economic benefit to our communities when we award contracts. Making procurement more accessible to local businesses is a vital part of this, as well as upholding high ethical standards and concentrating on our aims to reduce carbon emissions. So there's a wide range of legislation, codes of practice, and our own constitution is completely relevant to this. All this has to be complied with. Delivery plan is before you, as well as the stipulation that we do an annual procurement report. So I'd like to thank Sianed Parry and our corporate procurement team, Anthony Mason, our procurement managers here as well this morning. So I'd like to thank them for bringing this all together. I do have to emphasize that the delivery has to be the responsibility of all our officers and members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Chris. Sianed?
Bore da, diolch Cadeirydd. I'm Sianed Parry, the Head of Audit and Procurement, and I'm here today to present the corporate procurement strategy. The strategy has been informed by a raft of legislation, including the Wellbeing of Future Generations, the Wales Procurement Statement, the Public Partnership and Public Procurement Wales Bill, as well as being mindful of a new procurement bill which is currently making its journey through the legislative process. The Council has adopted commitments detailed in the Welsh Government's Code of Practice, Ethical Employment in Supply Chains, to ensure workers in the public sector supply chains are employed ethically and in compliance with both the letter and spirit of UK, EU and international laws. The strategy sets out the Council's key procurement priorities over the next 5 years in supporting the corporate plan and outlines the changes we will make to improve the management of external spend on goods, services and works. The strategy provides a brief overview of each priority, how we aim to deliver and how we will measure achievement and progress. The priorities include obtaining value for money, promoting more social value and community benefits, supporting local economies by making procurement more accessible to local businesses and the third sector organisations, promoting ethical standards and safeguarding amongst our suppliers, and contributing to the reduction of carbon emissions in the supply chain as part of Conwy's decarbonisation plan, and also ensuring compliance with government's arrangements. An action plan is included in the strategy which provides specific detailed activities which will support each of the actions required to deliver the key priority areas. The delivery of the strategy will be managed through an annually updated delivery plan with progress reported and published on an annual basis. I'm supported today, as Councillor Chris has already mentioned, by Anthony Mason, the Corporate Procurement Manager, who I'd like to thank as he was instrumental in drawing up the strategy. And we're both happy to take any questions you may have. Diolch.
Thank you very much for that, Sianed. Questions, members? Nearly got away with it there. We've got two of you, Councillor David, Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, I've raised concerns a number of times about school transport and where we procure it. And also there seems to be a conflict with the net zero. We were 800,000 over on the school transport again. It seems to be a budget that never goes down. And is there another way to provide that transport that's more environmentally friendly than taxes, that actual taxes coming and going all around the county? So really, you know, and so I'm looking at value for money, really, you know, and I'm also looking at meeting the targets. It's for 2030, isn't it? This net zero. I can't see how we can achieve that when every year we're employing more and more taxes to take children around the county, and those taxes predominantly are not environmentally friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David. Councillor Harry, I wasn't sure if you needed to suddenly declare an interest and leave if that was
I don't know. I'm looking at the monitoring officer. My thoughts are we probably haven't got there yet. I guess for Matt's benefit, and unfortunately my mother-in-law has an interest in, I think, one of Conway's largest homeschool transport providers, and my aunt through marriage is the director of the company in question. I appreciate we're not discussing.
Yeah,
sort of contractual
Councillor Harry, I think a
arrangements.
personal interest at most, it's worth declaring given the turn of the debate. But having said that, in terms of what we're actually here to talk about, which is the procurement strategy, I don't think that would be
Exactly.
seen as a prejudicial.
Well, I'll declare personal interest, but if we go any further, I'll shuffle out the room.
Yes, you can indeed.
Councillor David, there is a report on the education and skills forward plan on the 18th of July in relation to the home to school transport policy. So that will include officers from the RF and education. So
Thank you so much. I think that's, wasn't that what you were going to say there, Councillor Gromway?
Yeah, and on top of that, yes, we would welcome any suggestions you have on different ways of carrying children to school. Certainly, because of the complexity of where children live, the demography of the county, any ideas are more than welcome. But certainly, it is a constant concern of ours of how we reduce the burden on our finances in carrying children to school. But we are where we are as far as what is practical on the ground.
Thank you, Councillor Gromway, and also the increase in our children and young people with special needs is also adding very much to that demographic, isn't it? So thank you. Microphone on, please. Thank you.
Just ask a follow-up. Are we looking at providing that service ourselves in-house and making it environmentally friendly rather than be totally dependent on private taxi companies? Wouldn't that be the way forward to actually hopefully save money and also to meet the targets that we set, you know, for the net zero for 2030? We're not going to do that if every year there's more and more pupils seem to need this service. So it's more taxes, more on environmental taxes. So what I'm looking at is, have we considered, are we looking at providing that service ourselves and making it environmentally friendly?
That's coming to education scrutiny, yes. Oh, Councillor Hannah's gone, but yes, that's coming. We'll get really full airing there because it is a very important topic. So thank you very much. And next, Councillor Gareth, and still, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you know, there's obviously a lot of emphasis, and quite rightly so, on local procurement and using local third sectors and local businesses. Just want to make sure that, you know, in a way we're not duped. Just having a desk and an office and an address doesn't mean they're necessarily local. So we just need to make sure that the number of people employed within Conwy and North Wales feels about right, and the profits are actually going back into the area that people don't get away with. We'll rent a desk, we'll have an address, therefore we're local. So treat us as such.
Thank you, Councillor Gareth. Yes, there's never been more important time to support our local businesses, isn't there? And also supporting the Welsh language as well. So absolutely agree with that. And I know Shannon and I, we've had several conversations about this, haven't we? And that is the aim behind the new new contracts and different things, isn't it?
Cadeirydd, ia, mynd ymlaen o be mae Gareth newydd ei deud gwir, cydweld yn hollol efo chdi yn fan'na. A gai diolch i chi am yr adroddiad, a diolch i'r tri o'ch chi'n y gwaith yn fan'na. A mae o dwi yn sylwi wan gymaint o bwyslais sy'n cael ei roed ar y gwerth cymdeithasol, a mae hynny'n wych o beth. Pa da ni di mynd allan o pa mae Brexit wedi digwydd, ydy hynny yn caniatáu i ni roed edrych fwy ar gwmnïau lleol. Mae hyn yn rhywbeth oeddwn ni yn bwysio flynyddoedd yn dôl i gael fwy o gwmnïau lleol y medru cynnig am waith o fewn y cyngor. Ac mi gafodd na rhywfaint o ddynodiau digwydd. Mae siŵr gen i fi gronwy'n cofio wrach tua 7 mlynedd yn dôl, 6-7 mlynedd yn dôl, i gyfarfod hefo busnesau drio hwyluso i gobaith nhw o fedru cael gwaith neu gynnig gwasanaeth yn lleol. Dwi'n gwybod paint sydd wedi cynyddu o hynny yn y blynyddoedd dwytha, ac ydy o'n rhywbeth sydd angen edrych arno fo hefyd. Hefyd, be dwi ddim yn wybod ydy tua praint o be da ni'n wario ar gaffael, praint yno sy'n cael ei wario o fewn Conwy, a be di gwerth y bunt yn Conwy, praint yno fo sydd o fewn Gymru, neu o fewn Gogledd Cymru, ac faint yno fo sy'n mynd allan i wledydd eraill, a mi nai ddeud be gan i siofyn yn fama hefyd, nad ydy o'n mynd uniongyrchol na'n yr addysg, ond na'n ei gadw hwnnw tan Pwyllgor addysg y cwestiwn nesaf, lle bod fi'n yn crwydro yn bach yn fama. Ond dwi yn gobeithio bod ni'n edrych ar gyfleon i gwmnïau lleol cael fwy o waith o fewn Conwy. Newidi gwan os dwi'n allan o Brexit, lle nad oes angen ar European Centres a felly i'r fath raddau.
Iawn, diolch Cynghorydd Dilwyn. Mae'r deddfwriaeth newydd yma yn caniatáu i ni edrych ar y gwariant mwy lleol, a hefyd y polisia y Llywodraeth Cymraeg hefyd. Ar hyn o bryd, ar caffael, da ni'n gwario o ddeutu 200 miliwn yng Nghonwy ar gwariant allanol. Di'r ffigura ddim gyda ni ar hyn o bryd yn medru dweud faint wedi gwerth punt yng Nghonwy a faint da ni'n gwario yn lleol, ond dyna be di'r cam nesaf ni i asesu be yn union da ni'n gwario arno fo, ac i medru cynllunio'n gwaith ni yn well, ac i cael y data yna. Diolch.
Diolch, Sianed.
Ia, diolch yn fawr, ac jyst i ategu be mae Sioned yn dweud, mae'n debyg un peth ydy cael y gallu i hyrwyddo a cwmnïau lleol i gaffael am waith, ond llawn llaw fy hynny, mae rhaid addysgu cwmnïau mwyn iddyn nhw fod yn hyderus i gaffael am waith, a dwi'n meddwl hwnna ydy'r bwgan mwyaf da ni'n gweld, ydy bod cwmnïau ella oherwydd mae bobl ofn caffael, mae'n ofn y broses, mae'n wbath sydd yn costio amser yn sicr i gwmnïau bach, heb unrhyw sicrwydd o lwyddiant. A dwi'n meddwl mae addysgu cwmnïau lleol i allu bod yn hyderus i roi tendrau fewn am waith cyhoeddus. Nid just gwaith cyngor chwaith, os da ni eisiau tyfu economi'n lleol, mae rhaid ni edrych ar y tyfiant i dendro am gwaith ar draws y sector cyhoeddus. So wedyn, dwi'n meddwl mae yna gyfleon y fanna, mi fydd yna gyfleon yn sicr hefo'r agenda gwyrdd. Da ni'n gwybod faint o arian sy'n mynd i orfod mynd mewn i'r agenda yna dros y blynyddoedd, a mae angen yr arbenigedd yna hefyd yn lleol mwyn gwneud y math yna o waith. Wedyn, mae'r strategaeth yma'n hanfodol bwysig mwyn hyrwyddo'r elfennau yma, nid yn unig, fel da chi'n deud, Cynghorydd Dilwyn, yr gallu i gaffael yn lleol, ond gwneud y hyder yna i gwmnïau busnesau'n lleol i fod yn ymgymryd ar gwaith yna hefyd.
Thank you very much for that, Reen and Councillor Dilwyn. Okay, that's all with the questions now. Could we have a proposal, please, and the seconder? Councillor David, Councillor Gareth, thank you very much. Could we all show in support of this, please? Or online. And anyone against, please? Any abstentions? No. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone. Right, we now move to the last item. This is an exempt item, and I ask for a proposer and a seconder to agree to go into committee. Councillor Dilwyn has just proposed. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Paul, would everyone like to show, please? Thank you very much. Yes, of course.